The first novel I have read from Donna Tartt was The Secret History, and that became my entry point for dark academia literature. Before I even knew what the term dark academia was, I already understood the appeal of a well constructed narrative within the academic setting. There is an eeriness that only seems to linger around spaces of the high learned society, with tensions rising from intellectual rivalry and conflicting motives. Things are bound to go awry. That was the appeal that began my interest in reading Donna Tartt's novels. Since then, I made a point to follow up my reading with her second novel, The Little Friend, before proceeding to The Goldfinch, which is her latest novel published. I recently finished this book about a week ago, and I still remember reading the final sentence, being confusedly horrified, to say the least. Calmly setting the book aside, I squinted my eyes over and over, hoping that I would see clarity beneath it all. If not for some form of determination on my behalf, that moment would have been one effective direction to a reading slump. So why even bother making a video about it? Wouldn't it be better for everyone else, including me, that I just hop onto Fable or Goodreads and give the book a curt review? Well, it's because I have seen those reviews. However, I did not dwell on the opinions of others too keenly because I had every confidence that I will love it given Donna Tartt's style in writing. I intend for this video not as an attack on the author, but rather as a gentle reminder that sometimes what we envision as the readers, whilst going through a narrative, can be exceedingly different to what the writer had in mind. That being said, there's about a handful of characters and events that we need to talk about. Hence, I might need to spoil pieces of the plot, or in fact the entirety of it, in order to give some commentary of the book. You have my full permission. You do. You have my full permission to skip this video if you insist on reading this novel without knowing anything about it beforehand. However, don't say I didn't warn you. The story begins on Mother's Day, when Robin, a 9-year-old child, was found hanging from a tree in their family yard. The death was a sudden tragedy that will forever taint the Dufresne's family. 12 years later, Robin's two younger sisters and the only witnesses to their brother's death, Allison and Harriet, are now teenagers. Neither of them had a concrete recollection of the incident, but it changed both of them. Harriet is introduced to us as the difficult yet highly intelligent child. She develops a morbid fascination and an obsession with her brother's death and presumably murder, and starts investigating what could have happened with the help of her friend Hallie Hull. It seems as though the family was bound to fall apart from one tragedy after another. Her great-grandfather, Judge Cleve, once owned the local mansion, Tribulation, where they all lived together but lost the family's wealth in order to pay off his enormous debt. Their mother, Charlotte, sunk into a listless depression while their father, Dixon, abandons them without concern, and only their grandmother, Eddie, and their black housekeeper, Ida Rue, taking care of them. The prologue and the initial chapters set the tone for the story. Immediately, I was hooked. It was easy going through the next chapters. This aspect of detail is what makes Donna Tartt's novels completely unique and literary, taking the ample time to develop the characters and setting whilst simultaneously contributing to the story is an extraordinary ability that any author aspires to. Harriet continues with her investigation, and it is revealed that Robin had a fight with another boy shortly before his death. Harriet discovers that the boy is Danny Ratliff, the son of a highly dysfunctional family that is known for running an illegal business within their locality. Farish Ratliff, the elder brother, runs the operation with the help of Danny and their grandmother, Gum. Farish's plan was to conceal his drug shipment within a truck transporting venomous snakes, which another brother, Eugene, uses for his evangelical preaching. Harriet believes that Danny is the murderer, and she begins hatching her plans to exact justice. After a near disastrous encounter with the Ratliffs, Harriet and Helly manage to steal the Cobra from Eugene's office. They proceed to drop the snake into the truck from an abandoned road bridge, but discover that the van was being driven not by Danny, but by his grandmother, Gun, who was bitten and then hospitalized. Eventually, the brothers caught on that Harriet was involved in the attack. They would later find her after she returns early from summer camp following the death of her great aunt. For me, that was where I lost my interest bit by bit. Simply put, the plot made it harder for me to empathize because the crucial beats of the story were replaced by inconsequential events and people, if that makes sense. I didn't care for the Ratliffs because I wasn't given the reason to. My mind lingered on the supernatural elements that might lead on to a deeper reason. Perhaps the Cleves family had a darker history that we do not know of, and Harriet might lead us into it. Instead, the narrative forces us to pay attention to Danny, revealed to be Robin's little friend. And I'm at a loss on how to express myself because it all feels so contrived and coincidental for things just to happen the way they do without any explanation. To continue, Danny knows that the drugs have been hidden in a water tower and he decides to steal it for himself. Farish becomes so increasingly deranged by consuming his own product and forces Danny to take a drive where he was fatally shot by his own brother. After killing Farish, Danny discovers Harriet in the water tower and attempts to drown her. Harriet has been practicing holding her breath since the beginning of the story because she is a fan of Houdini. She pretends to drown in order to escape. Harriet climbs out of the tank, but the ladder collapses, leaving Danny behind. Later, he was discovered, arrested, and charged with his brother's murder. And there's Dixon. Remember him? Yeah. So he decides to show up and visit his daughter in the hospital while she is recovering from the incident. Imagine being so oblivious with what's going on with your own family to the point of not knowing that your children endanger themselves. Another plot contrivance is how the authorities never discover Harriet and Helly's involvement within that incident, and the doctors simply chalk it up to a result of an epileptic fit. And get this, the novel ends with Robin's death, still remaining a mystery. Yes. Finishing the book can trick you into thinking that simply getting the point is enough. It leads on with a convincing premise only to drop it, revealing the rest of the story. The narrative is elaborate and exquisite enough for the reader to proceed to the next chapters, but it could only go on for so long. The prose and atmosphere is impeccable, but almost all of it is wasted on mindless details. that, if removed, would make no difference to what the readers should have already known. For example, there are pages upon pages dedicated to religious imagery where it could have been more subtle instead. The reader's first impression dictates how a story in its entirety is to be perceived. How it went for me was that I never knew what the book was supposed to be read as, except that it was somewhat of a mystery or a thriller in genre. I don't intentionally ruin the element of surprise because that is essentially part of the enjoyment of reading. If I had known what it should be interpreted as, I'm not even sure if I would have seen it any differently. To an extent, I didn't mind the open ending. In fact, I love the concept of unsolved mysteries. It certainly was Donna Tartt's intention to subvert expectations, because in real life, not everyone gets to be Nancy Drew or Sherlock Holmes, and the guilty are often unnoticed, or worse, they get to walk free. The real horror of this novel was never about the mystery. A part of me did understand the point that all along it was about the obsession for justice, the dangerous naivety of youth, and the encompassing grief and a resistance to change. But I am truly tired of simply dismissing my dismay. Getting the point of a work of literature does not have to equal one's enjoyment. It was my own expectations that became my undoing. The story genuinely captivated me, and my imagination formed alongside anticipation as I kept reading. I'm only able to console myself with this. Never again will I be obligated to take meaning from a work that has never resonated with me to begin with, and so should you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on your next read.